year.
On that very same building and just down the hall, there exists a completely different world as far as radio stations go. WMMS, one of Cleveland's progressive rock stations.
Starting at the corner of 9th and Euclid downtown, and he says to me, "This is Cleveland.
This is my city."
Get down, damn it!
And we're back! Finally!
Whoa, where have we been?
We've been gone too long. Welcome to Stairway to Cleveland, kids. We're back for another exciting adventure together.
Hooray!
That's my line. Bastard.
Don't line stuff, man. It's too early. Everybody has lines, Scott.
We're joined by a very special guest this evening. You may know him from a couple of his great bands, Sunrise Jones and Uptight Sugar.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Hamilton.
The one and only.
Amazing keyboardist, amazing vocalist, lead singer.
Woo!
Just an amazing musician in general.
Yes.
Scott.
Fairly good cook.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Throw some quesadillas together after the show.
I wouldn't cook for anyone else, but I like it. You know what I mean?
Well, welcome. Thanks for coming.
I appreciate it, man. I'm walking up the stairway to Cleveland. This is awesome.
That's it. Here we are.
Thank you
we
very
are
much.
actually at the Gold Top Lounge for the first time
I love it.
recording.
Well,
This is
the
a great
very
hang.
first time was the pilot
promo. Yeah, the promo.
pilot promo. Yeah.
So,
Just
yeah.
a different angle. That's all.
We're going to chat a lot about what David has done musically and where he's going with it, and both of his bands. Then we're going to talk about, we got to talk Beatles because you're here.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about
We'll get that in.
the 2 Cleveland shows that the Beatles did, and then we're going to go to battle.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to mop the floor with these guys tonight.
Oh, you're so wrong.
He says he wins every time.
I do
He
every
doesn't.
time.
If anybody has watched all the episodes, you realize he's lost more than
Dude.
he's won.
This is a gimme. This is like a 2-foot putt.
All right. Well, we'll
I've seen you putt.
you know, I always look for that day when someone can tell me everything I want to know about the Beatles. You know what I mean?
Well,
Today's
I'm
not
guy.
that day.
He'll read you everything you want to know about the Beatles.
I will Wikipedia the shit out of the Beatles. I'm going to call Dave Schickler and get him on the line, and he's going to give me everything.
We should have
I
had
need to
Dave
know.
Schickler here today.
Oh, I called him. Or I messaged him, and he got me some stuff. So,
Oh, look at that.
but you know what? He sent me the exact same stuff I.
Yeah.
Well, see.
But anyway,
We love you, Dave.
we love you, Dave. Big shout out to Dave. Rick's here, our wonderful producer. Exciting as always.
What's up?
No.
The Beatles are Rick's
my favorite
favorite
part.
band.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
It's like not close.
No.
No.
I like it.
No. Rick's a punk.
It's hard. It's hard to. It's hard to argue.
All right, so let's get into it, Dave. When did you want to be a musician? Was it in your family? How did you just decide that this is what I want to do with my life?
Yeah, I mean, it was thrust upon me like probably a lot of people because growing up, my grandfather was a Pentecostal minister.
Really?
So like we went around to like all the churches and like, you know, and these were like the churches that you see on like you know, I call them the happy churches. But what's the movie with Dan Aykroyd, the Blues Brothers? You know, the church they go to in the Blues Brothers.
yeah.
That's kind of like my childhood, like going into those kind of churches. Well,
Like a Southern Baptist type situation?
about and about 8 years old, I picked up. Somebody bought me a drum set, and actually, it's funny. It was like a '63 or '64 Ludwig with the exact gray marble, just like Ringo's kit. You know what I mean? And at the time, I knew nothing about it. You know, I mean, it just happened to be that. But I picked up those drums and started playing in church and doing all that. And basically, that's where I come. I'm a church kid.
Oh,
You know
right
what I
on,
mean?
man. Yeah.
And it's like, and then as you move up through that, when you start off on drums, it's super fun, and you're like, oh, music is great. And it's probably a good thing to start with because you get those rhythms
it's
down.
so easy.
But then you start to realize I can't write songs on this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then I had to pick up like something that I could do keys on. So there's always a piano sitting around a church somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's like I just started playing that, and everyone in my family was super musical. Like my mom was the best singer I ever heard. Man.
Really?
She's passed away now.
I'm sorry.
She had a voice that was sort of like, I always tell people it was like she could do Patsy Cline like nothing you've ever heard in your life.
Crazy.
It was just unreal.
Not
and
an
then
easy feat.
my aunt, yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. She bit off a lot. But then my aunt was kind of more like me. She had that grimy sort of bluesy, and she was the piano player, and I kind of watched her a lot. She never had lessons or anything like me.
Really?
So, you know what I mean? You just kind of watch people pound it until it sounds right. And then, like, you know what I mean?
I've seen that porn.
Yeah, there's a movie called that, I think.
Watch People Pound It 2 was actually not as good as the first.
The sequel really didn't do the first one
Down with
justice.
sequels.
Yeah, so I'm lucky in the end because I was just around it. I saw it. My grandpa was the one preaching, so he taught me how to interact with the people and keep a room entertained, and you know what I mean.
That's
And it's
awesome.
like, so it did kind of come natural.
So did you learn theory, or did you just all by ear?
When all by ear. When people talk to me about it, I try to pretend that I know what they're talking about. I'm like anybody, you know what I mean? But like, I don't really know too much other than just, you sit in a room. Like I can remember, the first song I ever learned on a piano was "Let It Be," because it was like 4 chords, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I can very specifically remember my mom coming into the room after a while and opening the door and saying, "For God's sake, play a different song." Because I'd sit in there for 8 straight hours and just let it be, because I knew those chords. And it was like, and then just little by little, you start to say, I think that sounds like the Let It Be chords, but there's like another chord in there. I wonder if I can figure out what that one is.
Right.
And the next thing you know, you're playing 100 songs because you've learned 5 chords. You know what I mean? It's like, and then you're off to the races.
That's great. When was your first bar? When did you join a band? I mean, were you one of the high school guys or?
The first band I actually had was like a metal band. Do you guys? You guys are my age, basically. So we're
More or less.
We're you remember the Mushroom Head days?
I know Mushroom Head very well.
Okay, there you go. So I had a band called Spill for a minute. Okay. And then that band broke up. We only had that band for just a minute, and then that one broke up, and I had another band called Liquid Bitch. And it was very sounded kind of like people used to say if Marilyn Manson and Rage Against the Machine had a baby.
Wow.
It would be that band. So I got into that, doing that for a minute, only because no one else played songs that like had melodies and chords in them. You know what I mean? So I was like, I'll do this for now. And then the second I kind of got into something where I could like do more stuff like that, I got into it. But I had a band called The Stems. And we played around Geneva. We did the Cove thing and we did all that stuff. And then finally I just was like, if we stay here, we're just going to stay here. So I went out to Cleveland. And
big time.
So check this out. But here's a funny story. And this is the weird thing about how music happens. And it's so just strange how things work out. Somebody called me and said, they're having a show at the Fantasy. And my band's double booked. And we can't do one of the shows. Okay. So can you come? Does your band want to come and fill in? And so I literally said, how many people are going to be there? He's like, dude, probably 5. And I was like, dude, I'm good.
Right.
So I sat down on my couch and I picked up the remote and I start doing the thing where you're just flipping through the channels. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to sit here all night, flip through these channels. And I called the dude back and I was like, let's take the gig. I'll just go play a gig instead.
That's the Stems?
This was the Stems. So we get out there and we do this gig, and sure as shit, it was to like 5 people. But one of the people knew a guy named John Malm, who was the manager of 9 Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson, and the owner of Nothing Records, which is all those bands. Right. So he picked up the phone and held up the phone for my last song of the night, which was an original song that I had, but then I played it into Atlantis by Donovan.
Okay.
And I just did it because I liked it.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Well, the 5 people probably dug it too.
But that convinced him.
Oh, shit.
And he found out who I was through the owner of the Fantasy and called me and literally signed me over the phone.
Wow.
And that was my first. That was so we changed. he immediately made me fire all the members of that band that I was in, and we started kind of putting a new band together that would become Uptight Sugar.
So, was the style? What kind of style were you playing in? Was it? You said Mushroom Head. Was it?
Well, no, I had, like I said, when I got in the stems, it was because I needed a band that was playing like melodies and the kind of songs that I
Not
grew
just
up with.
screaming,
And
yeah.
I was a Floyd guy, Beatles guy, Zeppelin guy. That's what I was like into.
Right.
And so as soon as I found some guys that were like in that same mindset of we can do stuff like that, I was like, yeah. And then, and like I said at the time, I just wanted to do originals, but originals that kind of sounded that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like that was our
Now,
influence.
what year was this?
This would have been about 2007 or 8, maybe sometime right around in there. And then we ended up working together for like 10 years. And this is like what I was saying to you earlier, how it's just weird how shit happens. We wound up doing a demo of a song called Disneyland is Burning.
Nice.
And sent it to this band in England that you would only know them from. They did the theme song to The Sopranos. Woke up this morning, got my soda. They liked it so much that they flew here to make a record with me. Wow. And like, so at that point I'm thinking to myself, this is how it all happens, right? You know what I mean? And they come over here and they're amazing guys. And like, so we only know them for the Soprano song, but in the UK, they're like the Rolling Stones. They just love them over there.
Cool.
And their singer is a guy named Larry Love, and he's like he's the real deal. Like when you go on the street with him, it's like rolling around with Keith Richards. He does not care. He'll just walk in a room. We walked in. What's the name of that club that's across from the Fantasy? I think at the time it's the Hi-Fi.
It's the Hi-Fi now.
Is it still the Hi-Fi now? Well,
No,
I think
it's
No, it was.
the
It's
founder.
okay. Well, back then it was called the Hi-Fi. I think still.
Might have saw you there.
Well, there you go. So I just took him out for a night. He had come over and he's like, "Let's go out and show me Cleveland." So I took him to the Hi-Fi because it was like the only place that was open. And there's this like hardcore band in there just jamming out on the stage. And he walks up right in the middle of their set, walks up onto the stage and starts whispering into all their ears. And I'm not shitting you, in 5 minutes they were playing Woke Up This Morning and he was singing it. And the whole bar just fell apart.
He was just whispering the progression in their ear.
He's that guy. You know what I mean? He just doesn't care. When we took him to the airport to take him back to England, well, like as we were driving away, we could see a crowd of people around him and him like rapping or singing or something. I mean, he's just that dude. You know, he never stops. But
what was his name again?
Larry Love.
Larry Love.
Anyone, look it up. Anything by a band called Alabama 3, you will love it. It's fantastic.
Well, he's probably watching.
You should be watching if he's not. But anyway, so we made that record and it was good. It wasn't a full record. It was like 4 songs that we did. But we, in classic original music fashion, which becomes warfare, we couldn't agree on everything. And it was like, so we just decided, let's scratch it. And they went back and we're still buddies, but it's like we just never wound up putting that out. But that's why I was saying to you earlier, I'm almost glad we didn't, because you put all that money and time and everything into big, and then it goes on you. It's like, so sometimes that stuff can be a blessing.
Yeah, it could be a blessing in disguise, yeah.
And it really did lead me to where it was at, because that's so none of that version of Uptight Sugar took off because I was just in that stage of just wanting to make recorded music and I wasn't paying attention to a live band at all. But basically that breakup of not having that work out put me in that frame of mind of, I need local guys who I can work with every day and be like right hands-on with everything that's going on. And that's when I started meeting a lot of these different guys, and I got like more open to some of those other things. And that's where the version of Uptight Sugar came out that like you guys would have seen.
Absolutely.
But yeah, man, those journeys can be so weird, and they're always like, you never know you wake up and what's going to happen the next day, or who's going to call you, you know?
So that was a version of Uptight Sugar.
That was a version of it.
Where did the name Uptight Sugar come from?
It's John Mall. Again, we sat around when we first decided to break that other band up, and we were like, we need to break ties with that completely. So let's just make a new name and everything. And you know how you'll do when you're starting a new band? You're like, well, I've got great names. You know what I mean? So I made this whole list of names, you know, going down this thing. And I went over and we had a meeting and we sat down and I must have named him 70 names, you know, and all of them, he was like, those names suck, man. He's like, we need something much better than any of those names. And dude, I'm not kidding. I said, well, what the fuck, man? Let's just call it Uptight Sugar then. Literally, I just said two words together. He goes, dude, that's it. And then here's what happened. We immediately went to the internet, which is a smart thing to do when you're naming a band, and you just Google it.
Yeah.
And literally, it was nothing came up. Nothing. Do you know that's a gold mine to be able to say two words on the internet and nothing comes up except for that thing.
All right.
And like, so we just jumped right in with it, and that's been a blessing too, because it's like literally there's never been anyone call us and say sue us because we're using the same name as them or what, you know what I mean? It makes you realize why bands use the craziest names they can possibly think of, because they know no one else can possibly think of, you know,
who the hell would come up with this combo?
You know, it's like
try a stupid name like Big in Japan.
I actually love that name, dude.
Yeah,
dude, you know how many times I've had to explain what Big in Japan means? Well, and if you look up Vinyl Arcade on the internet, you get a bunch of you'll see us at some point, but you'll get the vinyl adhesives that you do to redo an arcade game.
Yeah. Right.
So, because they grab vinyl in arcade, and they're like, "Oh, you want vinyl? You want the Donkey Kong logo on the side of your thing? Okay, yeah, we have those for sale."
Dude, I love that.
Well,
I actually love both of those names, dude. Vinyl Arcade is sweet, and the logo's sweet too.
Thank you.
Yeah, the gods try to sue him. But yeah, when we didn't realize there was a punk band from the UK called Big in Japan back in the '80s. Go ahead, Rick.
I'm not saying anything, man.
I'm sure you're a fan.
You're like, I had all their records. Wait, so you would know the bass player. Do you know a guy named Seggs Jennings? It was a bass player for a punk band called The Ruts.
I know the Ruts.
He was the founder of The Ruts, and he's the one that was producing that record for me. He came from the UK as well. He was the sort of producer / utility type guy for the Alabama 3 when they played live. So he was working. I was like, but yeah, if you're a punk guy, you would definitely know the Ruts.
So Uptight Sugar got together. What year is this when you got this current lineup?
So this current lineup started playing probably around like 2016 or something like that.
Really?
Yeah, and it could have been 14 actually.
Okay.
But one of the guys in the band, and this is where, like I said, I mean, you think, oh, I need to work with this person, I need to work with this person, but there's talent all around you. And it's funny because, like, just because no one knows who they are does not mean they're not good.
Absolutely.
And, like, a really fortuitous thing for me was getting to meet this dude, Mike Murray, because he just a man of my own heart, like all the same music as me, and just, like, can play every instrument. And he's just he gets, like, you need that pro in your band all the time, you know what I mean? But he so there you go, and I'm happy to take that back seat. Like, I'll tell you straight up in the bin, when people ask me about my band, I say it all the time. I'm like, my job is to show up and find a cool pair of sunglasses to wear, and these guys do all the heavy lifting all night, and I just have to show up basically. But he sort of helped me get the band going in a pro way that I just was never really. I'm not a great band leader. I write the songs, play the songs, sing the songs, whatever, but the business end of it, not really my deal. So then he got me into, I come to find out, and I didn't know this when we first got together, but he's the main producer for American Greetings, the card company. So he got me in to go in with all these people, and they decided I was good enough, and now they have me sing on all the greeting cards.
So,
and
like the cards you open, or
if you go
like
into Walmart
stuff?
right now, you'll probably find a couple of cards that I'm on.
Okay.
And it's like it started out with Beatles, because my voice was so similar to the Beatles. They were like, the first one they ever had me on was a Beatles birthday. Say it's your birthday.
Sure.
And then we had to recut that and make it sound as much like the Beatles as possible so they could sell it basically as the Beatles. And so I went in and did that one, and that was an easy one for me because I've been doing that my whole life. And then they just decided I was good enough to, and dude, now they'll have me come in and do the weirdest stuff.
Really?
I mean, like, I always tell people, one time they had me in.
Sorry, your grandma died.
One time, and dude, you never know what it'll be. And one time they had me come in, and they just said, like, can say taco. say the word taco into the microphone. And I'm like, taco. And they're like, okay, say it happier. And I wound up saying the word taco like 6 times. And they're like, good enough. And I got a check in the mail at the end of the month for like $1,500. Like, and I was just
That's a
like,
lot of tacos.
this can't be real that this is happening.
Did you ever see what?
But
into?
I see the stuff pop up all the time now, because now American Greetings has gotten into this. And again, a lot of this is because Mike is so good at what he does. I'm sorry, I cussed.
You can swear all you.
Okay. Yeah. But he's so good at what he does that they've started catching on to these little projects that he's done, and now celebrities are getting on it. So he goes to LA and produces Christina Aguilera, and like this last one we sang on was Weird Al Yankovic did a birthday thing.
I know he does that
like,
video thing.
I've been so that's what they are. So you've seen the video greeting
Donny
parts.
Osmond
Where it's like they'll beat Donny Osmond. He did the Donny
my
Osmond.
drummer
like
sent
that.
me the
Yes,
Weird Al for my
exactly.
birthday last month.
Oh, that's so cool. And so I'm in the background vocals on that.
No
So
kidding.
it's like, yeah.
Who
and
knew?
So they've put me on
So do
with
you have to sit there and sing like 500 names?
thousands of names.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's only worth it when you're cashing the check. at
Yeah,
the end of the day.
absolutely.
But then you also get to say this weird project you did with, dude, I've been on with Dolly Parton. I've been on with it's crazy the names that you get to sing with. The best one ever, and this was my favorite thing that ever happened, was there was a chance they were doing a remake of the song My Girl with Smokey Robinson, okay? And they wanted just one person to do harmony with them on the song. And he selected me.
No shit.
And we did, I'll have it. I'll have to show it to you sometime.
dude.
I don't think I have it with me. But so now I have like this 1:30 recording of just me and Smokey Robinson.
That's
singing,
one of my wife's
singing My
favorites.
Girl. And it's like
Smokey's
at
amazing.
that moment, this was like probably 5 years ago now that happened or whatever. But it's like at that moment, I was like, I could die now. I'm
Yeah,
done. I could
right.
retire today and feel pretty good about it. I mean, you know what I mean? Just to like have that
Smokey
in my,
Robinson.
you know?
Yeah.
So it's I feel like as far as my music career, I've been just so lucky to bump into the right people at the right time, man. And honestly, it all comes back to taking that stupid show at
5
the Fantasy for 5 people. And I tell that to everyone I meet. I say, don't ever turn down a gig.
Always take the
And
show.
I say, when you go, even if there's 5 people
Give
there,
'em a show.
play like there's 500 there, because one of them might be someone important.
Exactly.
And it's like, so it's just good advice, I guess, for young bands.
Yeah. All right, so let's get back into Uptight Sugar.
Sure.
Now you guys got together. Now I know you've got 2 EPs out, right? And then you've released a bunch of singles. I saw.
Yeah, there
too.
were some singles, and I think we did the 2 EPs, and then we were trying so hard to get into like a full-length record, but like you guys went through it too. The pandemic hit, and like literally the last show Uptight Sugar played, we were the co-headliner for the Bright Winter Festival, which was, I think that must have been 2019 because, or 2020, because that was the year the pandemic really hit.
Right.
So that last show we played, we co-headlined that with I think that was Rah Rah Riot, a band called Rah Rah Riot, and so we played, and literally the last vision I have in my head is you couldn't see the end of the people. It was just like this great thing, and so in our mind we're thinking, sky's the limit, guys. We're finally getting there. We got these songs out. We're getting all this interest from different people, and like. Then the pandemic hit, and for the first little while you're like, this will be all right, you know what I mean? Hey, I need a break.
Yeah.
Were you like that?
Oh,
when the
absolutely.
pandemic first hit, I was like, I'm kind of enjoying this few months off and not playing any music. This is
absolutely.
nice. But then it started feeling scary, you know what I mean? And then so when the pandemic finally broke, we started talking about what we wanted to do, and of course we've got the cover band going, right? And like
That's the Sunrise Jones.
the Sunrise Jones. And right at that time, when we're thinking about what should we do, we get the call from the NFL about the draft, right?
Dude, how great was that?
Well, I'll tell you, when we first got the call, we said no. We turned them down. Here, and you'll understand why when I say this.
Sure.
We hadn't played in a year. Nothing. I mean, we had a practice, nothing. And so we're like, the first time we're going to go back on a stage is on national television at the drum. We're like, no, that's not happening. And so then after a couple days, clearer heads prevailed, and we were like, what are we doing? Even if we fall on our faces, we have got to go on that stage.
Lifetime,
and so we literally did 1 month, because by the time because that was the other thing, they reached out to us like at the beginning of April or right at the very end of March, and April, like the end of April, so it's like literally 3 weeks away. And this was, you have to go to Cleveland and get COVID tests over and over again, and this and that. You can't even come in the building and all that. But that's what made it difficult to get the original band back going again, was because the draft happened. That was huge and amazing. And then that's when the offers start coming in for a cover band. You know what I mean? Because it's like people in San Francisco saw you. Yeah. So they're asking if you'll come play their rich uncle's birthday party. You know what I mean? And you're like, okay, well, we got to start thinking about that. And it never really wound up being that, because the pandemic would come and go. Yeah. And then we'd shut down for another 3 months, and then we'd come back or whatever like that. But basically, I realized that when we came out of the pandemic, basically, we had become, the corporate people had just sunk their teeth into us, and they will not let us out. So like every gig we do now is like, you can't bring your friends. We just played Whiskey Island. We schedule one Whiskey Island show every year, even though they don't pay us what we like would make. It's because we know it's one show we can invite our friends to. Right. You know what I mean? It's like that's what it is. Like, you just need to be able to do that. But so yeah, it's been a weird path to take as far as that goes. But again, I cannot complain, dude. You got like, it's been a roller coaster ride since the draft.
Well, you were telling me earlier that, you know, you were all about the original thing. You're all about it, and then you realized, hey, to make some.
There's money to be made.
Listen,
there's some money out there.
That's where it's at. And listen, I'll tell you, if you're young and you're the guy that's like only originals, I'm just telling you, snap out of it, because you don't have to stop doing originals in order to play. Well, you're a perfect in order to make money. That's the thing. And I'll be honest, so many doors were opened for my original band through the cover band, and so many of the people that I met was because of that. In fact, the guy Mike Murray that I told you about, when I very first heard of him through my bass player, I told him, I was like, dude, I don't know. From what you tell me about that guy, I was like, I don't always play well with other people when it comes to original music. We better keep this thing covers. You know what I mean? Yeah. But again, once I got all that out of my way, you know what I mean? I realized this guy is the real deal, and he's everything I've ever wanted as a music partner. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, then it was just, it all made sense to me. But yeah, man, any door that swings open in music, just walk through it, whatever that door is. That's the thing.
I mean, you've got an amazing lineup in your band.
Yeah.
And and the first time that we saw you, and we've heard about it so often from all our Beatles friends, when you were doing the Beatles brunch at Music Box, and you guys do the Beatles like insane. I mean, it's because everyone said before I saw you, I'm like, well, they don't dress up like the Beatles. How could they be a Beatles tribute? And then I saw it. And
you gotta just close your eyes.
Yeah, you blew my balls off when I saw you guys.
I appreciate
the
that
musicianship
so much,
alone in your band.
Well, I'll be honest with you, and you guys will understand this. Like, that was a thing for a minute. Like, that was a debate in our band when we realized, and I always tell this story at the Beatles shows, and it's true. When the Music Box asked us to do the Beatles thing, we did not know any Beatles songs.
Really?
I had only played
Let It Be 5,000 times.
Well, I knew songs. Okay. But my band were not Beatles guys. You know what I mean? It's like they knew the Beatles a little bit, whatever, but it's like, so I knew the songs, and the only song I ever did, I always finished all my shows, even my original shows, with Hey Jude, just because it's fun. And people sing along to it, and it's fun. So I would always do it.
It's a good way to use up time, too.
So we ended one of our shows at the Music Box with Hey Jude, and that put it on. The owner came to us and said, we would love for you to do an all Beatles show. Do you want to do it? And like I said, you just say yes to everything, right? At that stage. And we're like, sure, that sounds great. And then we walk back to our cars and we're like, we're going to have to learn some Beatles songs for this fucking thing, right? It's like, how long can we put them off? But we did that classic thing where you go into a studio for, 2 months straight, and just 6 hours a day, 7 days a week, and just knock all of them out. And it wound up kind of being our niche. One, because those guys are such good musicians, they can play anything. And two, I taught myself to singing Beatles songs. So and you know what's funny is people always say, how can you do Paul? How can you do John? How can you know what I mean? You can't. It's like I don't realize I'm doing it.
Yeah, it's just a natural
I was
thing.
emulating them.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
how I
natural
learned
thing.
to sing.
Right.
So it's like I feel like, you know, when you hear that dude from that Escape band or whatever that's got that great Steve Perry voice, you know,
Yep.
he obviously was in his car singing that shit as he was driving around, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And sometimes it just sticks with you like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the Beatles thing came kind of easy to us, and we were lucky with that too. Like I said, they just offered us that. We never would have thought of that, but we said yes to it, and then it became this really great thing. Now people hire us just for the Beatles thing all the time. And dude, you know, it's cheating. Everyone loves the Beatles. You know what I mean? It's like these people. I always love the people that say, "I'm going to do
Almost
I'm going to
everyone.
do a Molly Hatchet tribute band." And it's like, dude, you're
That would be
man.
great.
But
You'd need 3 guitar players.
it would be, but it's like, how many people are going to be like lining up to get?
I'd go.
So you would, yes, but they would love you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And
who
you'd be
doesn't?
at every show, you'd be their main fan. But it is like with the Beatles, like everybody loves it so much. It is just kind of like, man, if you just do it,
Yeah,
decent.
you'll touch somebody with something. Somebody's heard
Yes.
those songs before, so
yeah, all age groups and all that
Right.
stuff.
Well, yeah,
so.
and the way, I mean, you guys emulate, I mean, you're doing, obviously, the Beatles stopped touring in 66.
Yeah.
And you're doing all these songs post that the Beatles couldn't pull off.
Yeah.
You're pulling them off live.
Okay, you want to hear a funny story? So I mentioned to you earlier that Lewis Clark from Electric Light Orchestra, and obviously you're an ELO guy just like me, and we were so lucky to have met him. And that, again, the Beatles show did that. So we're sitting in the green room on break, in between sets at the music box, and somebody knocks on the door, and it's this little blonde woman, and she's become one of my very good friends. Her name's Marianne, and she just pokes her head in. She goes, "Hey guys, I'm Marianne." She goes, "Hey, listen, great show. We love you guys. I've got someone out here who wants to meet you after the show. If you could just take a few minutes and come over, it would really make his day if you'd come over and visit with him." And I'm like, okay. And he goes, "He's right over there. His name's Luke Clark, and just come on over after the show whenever you get a chance." And we're like, okay, sounds great. And my bass player was the first one to say, "That name sounds so familiar to me." And I was like, and he Googled it up, and he goes, "You don't think?" And I was like, "No, I don't think that." And we looked out the door, and I was like, "They do kind of look a little bit familiar, don't they?" And I was like, "All right." And sure enough, someone went out to the table and said, "Are you Luke Clark from ELO?" And he's like, "Yeah, Clark from ELO." So then that guy comes back and tells me, "Yep, that's who it is." And then I just got sick.
Oh, yeah.
Because like I told you,
Yeah.
Beatles and ELO, that's for me. So growing up, those guys were my absolute idols. So going out there and having to do that second set, knowing he was sitting out there watching it, was like the most nerve-wracking thing that ever happened. But we finished it up, and they thought it was great. And I went over and talked to him, and he just told me the best stories. But what got me thinking about that was he was talking about the Beatles, and he's a huge Beatles fan. And he told one funny story he told me was, he goes, I met George Harrison one time. And he goes, I just walked in the room. He was backstage at an ELO show, and he goes, I just come walking up to him, and he goes, I walked in the room, and he said the only thing I could think of to say was, "You're George Harrison." And he looks up at me and he goes, "I know."
Oh, yeah.
And I was like,
George had a lot of good one-liners.
what a great story,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But anyway, he says to me, he goes, "Dave, the only band I've ever heard do the Beatles better than you guys," he said, "I've seen them all, everywhere, all through England, everywhere." He said, "The only band I've ever seen do the Beatles better than you are the Beatles." And I slunk down in my chair like this, like I was going to have a stroke or something.
Yeah.
And then he stopped
That's high
me.
praise.
Then he stopped me and he goes, "Actually, Dave, the Beatles shows were nothing but screaming girls, and they played out of tune, and they played like shit." He goes, "Actually, you play the Beatles better than the Beatles did." And then I was just like, okay, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I'm just leaving, and I don't think I can take any more of this. But I mean, just the idea that show got us to sit there,
Right?
him buying me drinks and telling me great story, and I just shut up and didn't say anything. I just let him talk, but it turned into this great relationship where they would invite us to their house, and like we would just go over and hang out with them. And they actually, the most street cred you can ever get in your life is, I threw my oldest daughter graduated in like 2018, and I threw her an open house, right? And I didn't invite them because I never thought in a million years they're going to drive to Geneva to my kid's open house, right? And they overheard about it, and Lou called me and asked if he could come.
Wow.
And I said, dude, show up. And he came, and so, like, I mean, street cred. I mean, what is more street cred than having a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer and a member of Yellow, a co-founding member of Yellow, in your living room just drinking wine with, like, people just walking by and saying hello to him, and it's just like...
You did mention he recently passed?
He passed, yes, and he did. And if actually, I should probably just tell you the story because it's amazing. And again, my life is all based around the idea of just luck. I'm in the right place at the right time.
Seems so much.
So
You are tonight.
So right
here.
So even here with you guys, right? So like he passed away. It was sudden, and no one really knew what to do with it. And his wife, Gloria, who I had told you a little bit about earlier, is just the sweetest person you'll ever meet in your life. And his whole family's just amazing. And they reached out to me and just said, Dave, Lou loved you so much. He loved your singing so much. Would you please come and sing a song at his funeral? So, of course, I was like, yes. And I was so nervous because, dude, you know, playing to 1,000 people is less stressful than playing to like a small group of people when it's like the pressure's
that
on.
kind
You know
of
what I
thing,
mean?
yeah.
And so I show up there right before I go up to play. Somebody goes, and hey, listen, if you can, kind of pay attention to that little camera over there. We're live streaming to Europe. For all of Lou's like musician friends,
absolutely.
And I'm like, okay,
You know, like Jeff Lynne's probably
I wish
watching
you
right
didn't
now.
tell me that, but okay, thank you. So I go up there and we do that song, and that was enough. That was like amazing enough. And at that point, my nerves go down, and I'm like, I've done this. Now I'm just a guest. I just have to sit here. So we start to it ends, and like we go over to the cemetery where we're gonna like put him in the ground and everything. And his daughter Rachel comes running up to me, like halfway over, and she goes, Dave, it never occurred to me. We have nothing planned for this, for here, for putting him in the ground, right? She's like, well, you just do something. Just do something. And she didn't even tell me what to. I didn't even know what to do. So I walk up to this.
This is
thing.
where your church background.
So
comes
this is
in.
where the church background comes in. So I come walking up to this thing, right, and he's got this casket here, and it's all long in front of me, and they've got the big Union Jack draped over it, and it's like beautiful, and there's people you can see everywhere, and we're in this gorgeous cemetery, right? And all I could think of to do in that moment was just a cappella, Let It Be. The first song I ever learned to play.
Right. Perfect circle.
And dude, so here I am singing this for Lou Clark's funeral. The people are coming up, family members crying, they're throwing their flags and flowers everywhere, and I'm singing this song, and some people are joining in, and it's like, and in that moment, I'm just sitting there, and I can't help but think, how the fuck
did I get here?
did I get here? You know what I mean? And it's just like, you know, you're so honored to be a part of it, but you're also just like, you know, I was playing Mario Brothers 15 minutes ago, and now here I am, you know, standing here at this thing. But it's like, I'm honored to have met the people I've met. But again, it's all just right place at the right time, and saying yes to all the people who wanted to work with me. And then just like that all bears fruit after a while, you know?
That's great, man. That's amazing.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I like it.
What I've
Sometimes,
just heard for the
sometimes
past
I still don't
45
even. Yeah, even I tell my bandmates about it, and they're like, "Dude, that's just crazy. You did that?"
Right.
And I'm like, "Yeah, it's really happened." It's
Yeah, because
crazy.
you're just Dave to them.
They don't- yeah. Oh, they just know me as the guy that kicks their ass in fantasy football.
Oh.
But if you watch, guys, I had to get the play. I almost brought the championship belt with me, but I thought that would be pretentious. I left it at home for the
He
day.
is a lead singer after all.
You know, I gotta take it easy from time to time.
So what's on the plate now? What's going on with both? Are you doing both bands still? Or are we focusing on the Sunrise Jones? What are
we're
we doing?
trying right now. The focus has been the Sunrise Jones because, like you said, once you start cashing those checks, you need those checks.
Absolutely.
And we've been having so much fun with it anyway. And we play gigs at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and those are so fun. And you never know who's going to hire you for a gig. So we opened for Jay Leno one night.
Oh, okay.
Actually, no, he opened for us one night.
That
actually,
sounds
but
better.
that was it.
That's right, Leno.
But
Learn your
it was
place.
just because he needed to get the hell out of there, and then we just entertained the rest of the night.
Yeah, keep your chin up, buddy.
So it is really fun, the stuff we get to do, but we are trying to get back to the original thing
Okay.
as soon as we can. So eventually we will, and we are going to start trying to play more shows that we can invite people to. We've decided that as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully you guys will be seeing more of us out and about. We're playing in Geneva at the Cove on in November. I can't remember the day. I think November 5th. PJ finally got me.
Hey,
and then
I'm going to be there.
You might be there. I hope you do.
If I'm on the show, I'll be there.
Yeah, and then he got us for one more, because you know how PJ does. If he locks you in for one, he locks you in for two. So
Or 10.
he's going to have us on like 4th of July weekend 2023 coming
right
up.
on.
So that'll be a fun one. So if you've been hoping we're going to play around in that area, put it on.
Now, are you still going to be doing the Beatles brunch at Music Box?
We're going to do less brunches.
Okay. Evening shows at Music Box?
Yeah.
No bunches and bunches of brunches.
Yeah, well, you'd be
Turn his mic off.
What winds up happening is with the brunches, and they are fun, but like you'll play a show Saturday night and get out of there at like 1 o'clock in the morning,
And then
they need you
brunch.
back on the stage at 9 a.m.
Yeah, nobody likes
You know
that.
what I mean? And
I know
they're
what you
drinking
mean.
Bloody Marys, but you're not.
Right.
And it's like, they're really difficult, and they can be daytime shows when they're just a little bit more nerve wracking, kind of. It's like at nighttime, there's just something about you almost don't care if you fuck up a little bit.
You know why? Because everybody's moved up.
There you go. So we feel like we're just taking it easy on ourselves a little bit. We'll probably do less brunch style shows, and we really do want to take that Beatles show to a few new places. We want to kind of get it out and about a little bit
good
more. So
idea.
if you guys have any good spots that you can think of, man, throw them our way. We'd like to kind of
absolutely.
move
We'll
it
talk
around
afterwards.
a little bit.
Websites? You got any websites you want to plug?
TheSunriseJones.com, UptightSugar.com.
If he's on the bottom of the screen or top of the screen, right?
Yeah, if you do want to hear the music, you can go on Spotify and listen to all the stuff we've got. Apple Music. I think all the streaming sites do have it.
I listened to it today, actually. Your stuff's great, man.
Yeah, I appreciate
We
it.
love it.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of held up. My fear was that we'd take that break off, and then I'd come back and it would sound like not good. It would be dated. You know, Music can date super quick. It's held up so far. So go give it a listen while it's still somewhat relevant.
No, it's good
and
stuff,
yeah, hopefully you'll like it, and then hopefully we'll get something else out here soon. We're working on it.
Cool. Well, I think we're caught up, Dave.
Yeah.
So you know what we got to talk about now? We got to talk about the Beatles in Cleveland. We're going to take a little break so Keith could take a whiz.
How'd you know?
We'll be back in 2 and 2 with more with Dave and I guess Keith.
And maybe Scott, if he doesn't get his ass.
And his awesome shirt.
Oh, well, thank you.
My shirt's pretty cool too.
It is. It's cool.
It's
All right, we'll be back in 2 and 2. And we're back. Segment 2. We are going to talk about the Cleveland concerts by the Beatles. There were 2 of them.
Just 2.
Both of them ended fairly poorly. Are you familiar with these, Dave?
Yeah. I'm familiar, especially with the one from Public Hall.
Right, that was the first one.
I paid more attention to that one. The 66 one, I think, was the second one
second
they
one was
did.
66.
And what happened at that one?
Well, we'll get to it. Let's start with Public Hall first. That was September 15th, 1964.
Oh, I remember it well.
Yeah, none of us were around quite yet.
No.
Now, they were staying, from what my notes, not off of Wikipedia,
If you can read them.
say, the night before the concert, the Beatles were staying at the Sheraton Cleveland Hotel, which is now the Renaissance.
Oh.
And everything seemed fine until the Beatles decided to stick their heads out the window and wave to their adoring fans.
Which you cannot do.
Which
when you're as
caused
famous.
absolutely mayhem. People were sneaking in, rushing the police. Not good. Not good at all. Now, Rick, you said that, was it this concert that your wife had family at?
No, the stadium.
Okay, so we'll come back to you with your awesome story later. So this was at the Public Hall. They had 100 police officers in front of the stage. And those police officers weren't quite up to figuring out what the hubbub was all about for these guys. So they all turned their backs to watch the concert. Well, while they turned their backs to watch a concert, thousands of kids jumped
I would
up
have
on
done
the
the
stage.
same thing.
Oh, my God.
It's the Beatles. I
During
would've
All My
watched.
Lovin', the crowd pushed past police and onto the stage. Yeah, the police couldn't. It says here the police couldn't figure out what the big deal was.
Well,
I still can't figure it
They're
out.
just 4 guys from Liverpool.
Well, think about this
with girl hair.
before you've ever really seen anything like that. I mean, we had Elvis, you know what I mean, right? So there was a little bit of that, but at that point, the parents had kind of shut it down.
Right.
You know what I mean? They were like, we don't want our kids acting crazy like this, so we got into the bubblegum rock. But then the Beatles came back in and just like pandemonium a bit. So some of those cops were probably like, what is this?
Yeah, they said the Beatles had to retreat backstage because the girls just took over the stage.
Even Ringo.
You know,
He probably stayed out with the girls, I would imagine.
yeah.
I would imagine.
If he's smart.
Ringo's cool.
John Lennon even was quoted as saying, "This has never happened to us before. We have never had a show stopped." And this is after Beatlemania in the UK.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that says a lot about
Cleveland fans.
yeah. land.
Like Cleveland.
And they also said that there was like rivers of piss and stuff running down the steps.
Bottlegate's making a lot more sense now than I've been.
Yeah. So they played. They played a total of 12 songs. They actually eventually got through their 12-song set, but the PR damage alone was terrible for Cleveland. We're already on the brink of hating rock and roll.
Yeah.
at
Thanks,
this
Cleveland.
point. 2 months after the Beatles performed there, the Rolling Stones performed there. And,
Was it as bad?
It was worse because somebody fell from the balcony.
Oh.
And I don't know if they died or got severely hurt or whatever.
That's the worst.
So that's when Cleveland Mayor Ralph Locher banned rock concerts from the city of Cleveland, from publicly owned venues. So the Beatles couldn't come back for 2 years.
No shows for you. 2 years.
In that time, a lot of things had changed. So by the time they came back in '66, this is literally soon after John Lennon had said the infamous "We're bigger than Jesus" line.
Yeah.
But
So
he didn't
when-
mean it that way.
No, he was totally misquoted.
Yeah.
But fake news back then.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. Well, he was making a point.
He was making a point.
I
He
mean,
was making
listen,
a
when
point.
he'll tell, it wasn't even necessarily that he was misquoted as much as it was people just couldn't understand that he was just trying to speak in realistic terms.
Yeah. And say we're not
You don't
that
have
big.
you don't have kids bum rushing churches. You know what I mean? That's all he's saying. He's like, right now we're more popular than Jesus Christ, and it was a factual statement.
You're not wrong. But it set off everything.
Oh, yeah, it was absolutely crazy.
Burned the Beatles albums. And,
Well, that was the thing about Lennon too. I mean, he was the things he said, even if they made sense or were true, he said them in such a way that it would just set people off. You know what I mean? He just had that artistic way about him.
that's artistic is the word for it.
Yeah.
Some would say swarmy.
Yeah.
That's artistic.
So basically, the second Beatles concert was August 14th of 1966.
Would that be the Rubber Soul Tour?
This would be
That would have been the end because they would have done Candlestick that same year, right?
Yeah,
And
this
finished.
it was the third show of 14. The show lasted 30 minutes.
Yep.
It had 11 songs.
I wish.
Yeah, I know. Really?
That'd be a great
Actually, you know what? That's apparently a long Beatles show. I heard Paul McCartney in an interview say one time their sets were only a half hour and they only lasted 20 minutes because they were so nervous they'd play everything double speed. You know, so he's like, yeah, they'd sit there all day in line and then they'd get 20 minutes.
Yeah,
you know,
and their songs weren't exactly Inagata I mean, they're 2 minutes. in and out,
2
you know?
minutes anyway. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
So they played. This is the set list of 11 songs. Rock and roll music. She's a Woman. If I Needed Someone. Day Tripper, which was the new hit, I guess, back then.
God,
Babies
great
in
tune.
Black. I Feel Fine. Yesterday, which I'm sure nobody heard at all.
Yeah.
I Want to Be Your Man, because, you got to give Ringo some love. Nowhere Man. Paperback Writer. And closing out with, of course, Long Tall Sally, because Paul loved that song.
It's a great set.
So when they did play it, a lot of the Cleveland radio stations had to beg for them to bring the Beatles back, just because they were so popular.
Yeah.
And finally, the city gave in and brought them back to town. they told him basically, if you want to be a major city with rock and roll, you've got to bring the Beatles back.
You have to, that's what I'm saying. You can't just skip that.
We're the rock and roll capital of the world. I mean,
Now.
So they tell me.
So they say.
let's see what it says. Price for tickets ranged from $3 to $5.50.
Oh my God.
Now you can see Bruce Springsteen for $4,000.
Don't get me started.
But they were expecting to sell 60,000 tickets. They barely reached 20,000 because of the whole John Lennon controversy. So there was plenty of room available.
So that's what you'd call an intimate Beatles show with only 20,000
Right.
people screaming in your face.
Right. And they said the sound system wasn't as bad as everybody says it was. It was still shitty sound system,
Well, yeah.
but for at the time, for an outdoor venue, it was the best they could get
At the time.
But with 20,000 screaming teenager girls,
You can't hear shit.
yeah, you still couldn't hear anything.
Yeah.
I know what that's like.
So they sold 20,000. Here's a real cool thing. I don't know if you guys know about this. I think I mentioned this to you, Keith. They had a trailer behind second base, behind the stage, and the trailer was all decked out. It had like zebra striped couch and all this white shag carpeting everywhere. It was all decked out for the guys. Had a radio with all the speakers. That trailer was from Sahara Park right here on Perry on 20.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
They brought it down there. They put it down. From what I hear, that trailer is still there.
What?
At Sahara Park, yeah. People have broken in throughout the years.
I
and
was going to
stole-
say, I can guarantee it doesn't look good.
Yeah, they probably broke.
I've been through Sahara Trail.
Yeah, they've broken in and stolen a bunch of stuff. But
How have I not known about
yeah,
this?
it was from right here on 20 to Sahara
That's
Motor
insane.
Lodge. Or
I
whatever it's
drive
called.
past there all the time. I used to deliver there a bunch when I was
Yeah.
working for Lowe's.
So yeah, that's where it was, and it's still supposedly there. I've always wanted to go there and try to see
Well,
if
we
I
should
can
at
find
least
it.
go look at
We
it.
should.
That's what I say,
Let's
man.
make a field
We'll
trip
be
out
right
of it.
back.
Take a screw out of the door or something.
We're leaving.
It's like, yeah.
Road trip.
So yeah, so they had that, and that's where they had to once again flee once the crowd rushed the stage at the concert, because this is what they had for security. You know the snow fences with the little planks? That's what they used for security fencing at this
Nice.
concert.
It's not going to work.
Nice.
They said by the fourth song, people were just bum rushing the stage. So they had to bail out, and they had to make the announcement if they didn't sit down that the Beatles would not continue playing.
They weren't doing 10-cent beer night that night, were they?
No, it was, yeah. Are the Rangers in town? No.
So 2,500 people invaded the stadium field. The police, overmatched, had no choice but to let them through. So it was day trippers when they attacked the stage.
They went at it.
Yeah, one-way ticket. The crowd kept getting bigger and bigger over the snow fencing.
Yeah.
The Beatles eventually returned to just have the fans storm the stage one more time. DJs from WIXY urged the crowd to remain in their seats. The Beatles finally returned and completed their 11-song set.
Wixie 1260? Is that what it was?
So the Beatles never get stopped, and they get stopped twice in Cleveland.
Well, yeah,
That's awesome.
twice in one show and once in the first show. But that was their last time here. They said after the show, fans still stormed the stage and started stealing shit.
Oh.
So somewhere
can't
out
blame
there
them
in
for that,
Cleveland,
man.
there's probably some great.
That's some good shit.
I'm
Beatles
a band guy. Anything I can get souvenir wise, man, I will try to get it. I've got a really good set list collection of just like running on the stage. At
Yeah.
least grab a set list.
Set
Oh, I
list is
do.
great.
If you look right over there, I have the Donna's set list. That
Oh, I
stole,
love it, man. That's
but
what
I stole
say.
it before they went on. They had the set
they had
list
no
in
idea
there.
what they were playing.
And then I felt bad because I know what it's like not to have a set list. So it was all folded, and I set it back on the stage. So when the guitar player came out, she kind of looked at the set list and was like, why is that folded?
They would have to play "Take It Off" 12 times in a row.
I'm fine with that. Great song. But then after the show, I grabbed it. Put
Yeah,
it.
you got to take something home with you, man. If you
Now,
can.
Rick, you did say you had a very exciting story that Jen, your wife, had some relatives at this show.
Super exciting. My mother-in-law actually was
Okay.
at the stadium show, and she was one of the fans that stormed the stage. Got down. I don't think she ever got on the stage, but she definitely made it down to the floor level or ground level, whatever.
Infield.
And then, after the show, they broke into the hotel that they were at, trying to meet the Beatles. Her and her friend wanted to be with Paul, and she wanted to be with George. I'm like, George?
Well, yeah, he's
But
one of the best Beatles.
Ringo.
they never got to meet the Beatles, but somebody who worked at the hotel gave them some utensils that supposedly they ate off of.
Oh, nice.
All hearsay. Cannot be confirmed.
So
But
I told Rick that we could.
when you're a young teenage girl and someone said, "Here, George ate off this fork."
Hey, listen, DNA testing has gotten much better
That's what
over
I'm
the
saying.
last
We
few
could,
years.
if that's true, we could build our own George and John and bring them back.
We could clone them and start a band.
What are we
With our
talking
luck, it
about
would
now?
be Ringo's spork. We'd end up with
Get a
another
T-shirt made. I am Ringo Sport.
That's the one thing I found weird about these stadium concerts is that they literally just played in the field and nobody was around. They were all up in the stands.
All up in the thing.
So
yeah,
how
and it's
weird would
like-
that be performing with nobody within hundreds of yards of you until, of course, they rush the stage.
Yeah.
But just to think
I'd
about
almost
that.
want them to rush the stage.
Yeah.
I think at some point.
You know,
To an
it's,
extent.
it's crazy because it's like I think I would be sort of nervous as to just, you don't know who's in that group rushing the stage. Like if you're just thinking, oh, these are just all fans having a good time. But I'm always thinking there's that one person that's wanting to do something evil to you. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
Even if their intentions aren't evil,
yeah.
2,500 of them
Yeah.
at once, that's evil because
Yeah.
they're going to rip you apart.
I'm usually that guy.
Yeah. Well, that's what I say. A lot of well-intentioned bridesmaids have wrecked some equipment. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, you know.
Kidding, brother. I've almost lost teeth from well-intentioned.
I actually had a
Fans.
woman's tooth fall out at a show, and she said she'd be right back. She's got to go put her tooth back in. So
It's
yeah,
kind of
it
the
happens.
same. It's kind of the same.
People do lose teeth.
Actually, you want to know the coolest person that ever approached me at a gig, a wedding gig? I think it was a bridesmaid. And she has 2 drinks in her hands like this, right? And she just comes walking up to me right in the middle of the song. I'm just singing at the microphone.
Yeah,
She walks
those
up
are
to me
great,
and
aren't
she goes, hold my drinks. And she hands me both of her drinks like this and then just proceeds to just dance in front of me for like, half the song or whatever. And then she just walks back over to me and she goes, thanks.
Well, you are the hired help after all.
Just takes it, thanks, and just walks away as if I was a drink holder. You know what I mean? I was just like, and then, instead of being mad, I actually was kind of like, that might be the coolest thing I've ever seen somebody do at any show
That's
ever.
a pretty boss move.
Yeah.
I've gotten mad at people that come up to the stage while I'm singing.
Oh, my
and
God.
asking questions.
My favorite-
And then getting mad that we don't know the song they want to hear.
My favorite, I know we're getting off subject, but my favorite, I tell this story all the time, is we were playing a show. This is right after Bohemian Rhapsody came out, the movie.
Yeah.
And we're playing a show. I think we were playing at West Park Station. And this girl comes up.
3-piece, by the way.
3-piece. Yeah.
That
Girl
place
comes-
gets crazy, by the way.
Yeah. And she comes up, she goes, play Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm like, no.
3-piece band.
I said, we're 3-piece and we don't know it. Just play it.
Dude.
It's great.
I
That's the wonder of alcohol.
have you beat. If for the most whacked out request ever. We were playing some show somewhere, don't even remember where. Keyboard player sitting over here, and this lady walks up to him and goes, "Play Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead" from The Wizard of Oz. And we thought she was joking. We were like, oh my gosh, yeah, oh god, that'd be great. She's
We'd
like,
actually
she's
try to
like,
play
do you
that.
know it? Do you know Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead from The Wizard of Oz? And finally, we're like, no, sorry, like we can't play that.
It's a great idea. It's a great song,
Dude,
but no, we don't know
she was
it.
so angry at us. She gave us the stink eye the whole rest of the night because we didn't just rock out.
You're the
Ding
only
Dong,
band in
the
town
Witch is
doesn't
Dead.
play it, apparently.
And no, because I thought we actually talked about it afterwards. We were like, why was she so confident that we were gonna, like, what was the band? She's clearly done this before. And walked up to somebody and they were like, great, key of A, let's do this thing. You know what I mean? It's like,
With all due respect, it does sound like a song that would be on a vinyl arcade set list.
It does.
It's like, you know, I've heard. By the way, which I love your show tunes.
Well, yeah,
segment that you do, man. I think
that's the whole
awesome.
thing. I mean, the band does TV themes.
That's awesome, and I love that kind of stuff.
Cartoon themes and commercials.
Listen, dude, if I
and a
showed
woman
up,
came up to us at a show and said, "You play everything everybody else does," and I'm like, "I've never heard somebody else play Fat Albert before."
dude, I love it. I think it's awesome. The only thing I'm telling you, I'm waiting my whole life to show up and see some band knock out the theme to Sanford and Son, like note for note.
It's on the list.
Blast it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I will be like, I'll pay for
I've
it
played
the whole
that
night.
before. Yeah.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
dude, I love I listen to that just as a standalone recording. That's one of the best things I've ever heard. Yeah. So when it comes to TV themes, I'm always waiting for that band to show up.
I mean,
and just
we're a
knock
TV
that out
theme
of the
cover
park.
band, and the woman says, "You play everything everybody does." I'm like, I don't think so.
No, man, you had some deep ones in there from what I heard, man. It
Thank
was
you.
I liked it, man.
Yeah. You know,
I'm telling you, I'm
that's
a
the
fan.
niche. But
I think we've talked about the Beatles enough.
I think we talked about Vinyl Arcade
can
enough.
I say one thing though about the
Please.
Beatles? So public hall, the public hall thing.
Yes.
Have you guys ever done a gig at public hall by any
No,
chance?
I
Just
have
from
not.
because weird stuff pops up there, like weddings and stuff like that.
Sure.
So you never know. But we've had a couple of chances to play there, and if you ever get a chance to play there, they've kept so much of it totally original.
Really?
I mean, it's crazy. Like when you walk around in the backstage areas and stuff, it's all really old. It looks like the original paint. Everything is just like
that's cool.
kept the
It's a
same.
cool place.
Well, so they took us up the second time we played there. They took us up into what would be the main dressing room for like the bands and stuff like that or whatever. And back in those days, from what I hear, the guy that said, this is where the bands came. This was the only spot for the main bands to come. So when they got dressed, this is where they were at. And it's like, okay. So we go up in here, and when you open the door, it is all exactly the same. They've got the
Time capsule,
the
huh?
porcelain, like the mirrors with the big bulb lights all
sure.
around each one of them. You know what I mean? And with all the porcelain everywhere, you've got their own sink, and there's showers back here, and there's like a little lounge area and whatever. And when we went in there and realized how it looks exactly like it's definitely from like the 60s.
Dude.
And all you can think about is who has sat right in this spot. Because like we've talked about the Beatles, and we know the Beatles were there, and that's awesome. The Doors, Jimi Hendrix, Rolling Stones,
The Who,
Moody Blues, dude. I mean, you just go down the list. They were all there in that spot. And it's so humbling to walk in that room and just sit in that spot. And I sat and just looked in that mirror, and my brain just went crazy. And if you ever get a chance to just go find that room up in there and just sit in that room, it's so cool to just go in. And all we kept saying in there, I would look over there and I'd be like, dude, what's the over under on how many pounds of cocaine have been done in this exact spot? If that toilet could talk, it would tell the greatest stories of all time.
It's probably piss.
That's it. It would be piss,
Pardon the pun.
but it would have great stories. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, so I just had to get that in there because that is a really neat room, and I'm glad they've kept it all exactly the same like that.
Absolutely.
You can get lost in there just with the ramps.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know why they don't have more shows there now.
It's a beautiful venue.
I would love to see a cool band there.
The last time I was there, I saw Cheap Trick, probably, I don't know, might have been 8 years ago.
Oh, that would be so. They do still occasionally throw a concert there.
It was fantastic.
I feel like House of Blues sort of ruined that to some degree.
Well, it killed a lot of smaller venues.
Rick and I
The mid-size.
played at the House of Blues.
Yeah.
My band and his band played at the House of Blues.
That is true.
That is true.
I played at the House of Blues a couple times.
And you go back in their green room and you see, and you just don't want to sit on the furniture sometimes. I don't know what happened on this.
They have quite a few dressing rooms back there, but
yeah.
I got a picture of my wife in the shower in that green room.
I don't know.
Well,
she had her clothes on. She's just standing.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, you got to be specific, bro.
Throw that up.
We love you, Jen. I know you're watching. All right, have we discussed the Beatles in Cleveland enough?
I think
Probably.
So.
I mean, it was a great conversation.
They played two shows, so I will say this: I'm really glad Cleveland got to experience Beatlemania like that, though.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think they took it over the limit, though, didn't they?
You know, well, good. That's Cleveland.
what we do.
That's what
what we
Cleveland
do.
does, man. There you go.
All right, so I think we decided Cleveland does rock indeed, especially with the Beatles.
It does, man.
And now, boys,
Oh,
we're throwing down.
we're throwing down. Scott thinks he's going to win.
Dude, this is a cakewalk tonight.
Oh, here we go.
I don't even know
Whatever.
why these guys picked the two they
All
picked.
right, let's see.
But we're gonna battle and see who's. And granted, every Beatles album is amazing.
There's no bad.
Unless you talk to Rick.
But we're going to discuss our favorite Beatles albums.
I don't hate the Beatles.
You probably said
I don't think they're the greatest thing in the world. That's all.
Hey, it's
Yellow
the Beatles.
Submarine wasn't great.
You got
Can we
Beatles
say
fans
that?
and you got Kinks
Okay.
fans, and there they are. You know, they're-
But I love the Kinks too.
I'm on the
Kinks.
Kinks. I'm on Team Kinks.
You're on Team Kinks. I love the Kinks.
Listen, a guy by the name of Kevin McMahon, who was in a band called Prick, if you remember from back in the, I got to be buddies with him a little bit. He's actually the guy who introduced me to my bass player originally, so that guy started the whole thing. But he was a huge Kinks fan.
I love the Kinks.
And me and him got into it one day about, he was like, I know you're a Beatles guy, but he's like, I'm telling you the Kinks. And I was like, dude, I think Kinks are cool, but like, I don't know that they're on the same level as the Beatles. But like, he got me going
He's right,
down.
they're not.
He got
They're
me,
over
well,
here.
Well, he got me going down the rabbit hole on the Kinks. And I'll be honest with
Kinks
you,
are
where it
great.
stands today, you could almost make the argument the Kinks are the best band ever. Like just for pure artistic and commercial success and
And longevity.
they're so incredibly creative in everything they did, and just so I'm with you, buddy. I'm still a Beatles guy,
Kinks
but
stuff, like even the later Kinks stuff, are
Dude.
some of my favorite albums.
Same.
yes,
I
even
love
the
the
stuff
Kinks.
all the way
I
up
love
through
them.
the early '80s, man. They were doing really
I've seen the Kinks
creative,
probably 10
cool
times
shit,
in
man.
concert.
Yes.
I
We'll
love the Kinks.
discuss the Kinks in another episode.
Another one.
But right now, I'm going to kick their ass at Beatles records.
Wrong.
So we're going to be back in 2 and 2. Some kind of ad will be here. Throw something in, Rick. Make something cool. Put it in here.
Put it in an ad.
All right.
All right, we'll be back. All right, boys, it's battle time. We are going to battle our favorite Beatles record. And like I said earlier, I think this is going to be a walk in the park for Old
Well-
MSV.
All right.
Nobody cares what you think, Scott,
Keith,
or what you said.
I think you're up first because you have the oldest record.
Well, I'm going to tell you what. The 3 albums we're doing tonight are my 3 favorite albums, so I'm not going to argue with anybody. And Scott thinks he's going to win, but he's not. My favorite Beatles album is Revolver, and there's plenty of reason why. Because I was a big fan of Rubber Soul. I liked Rubber Soul, but I think they kicked it up a notch with this one right afterwards. And I mean, so many classics on here, and I'm just looking at them.
See, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
This is why it's my favorite. The more I look at it, the more I love it. Let me start out with Taxman, of course, George Harrison's song, and I was a big George Harrison fan.
So good.
And it was one of the first albums I had ever heard by the Beatles, and I love it. There's no bad songs on it. Eleanor Rigby, which of course was nothing but strings and Paul McCartney. Yellow Submarine. It's a cool tune. I mean, when you're a kid and you're
Kids
hearing the
love it.
Beatles,
Kids love
it. Yeah. I mean, when that
They
was
go
it.
bonkers at shows when we
Yeah.
play. Dude. They do. It's true.
She said so great. Good Day Sunshine. I'm just going through them here. But Tomorrow Never Knows. I believe it's a song in C. And Paul
You
stays
don't know how
on.
to play a C?
Shut up. It's the G I can't figure out. Anyway, I think he stays on C the whole song.
Never leave C.
And I think, like we had talked about, it was the prequel to the psychedelic era.
That was pretty heavily psychedelic.
It ushered it in, I think.
And what was Sgt. Pepper was next. So I mean, it was I don't know. It's just my favorite. I love it. Revolver.
Yeah, it was. I will say that is the first Beatles record that really spoke to me and got me interested in, like, wow, man, something cool is going on. I will say George says that he can't tell the records apart between Rubber Soul and Revolver. He thinks they were made really closely together.
Mm-hmm.
He says to him they're like the same record. But I'm like you. I feel like there is a distinct shift to
think so.
psychedelia at the end of this record. And whether they meant to do it or not, it changed everything. So I think that's a really cool record.
Shall I drop some knowledge?
Please don't.
In my house.
Listen, this was released on August 5th, 1966. Accompanied by a double A side, Eleanor Rigby, Yellow Submarine. One of them was good. Became regarded as one of the greatest and most innovative albums in the history of popular music.
Yeah. I would agree.
Not too shabby.
I would agree.
Revolver expanded the boundaries of pop music, revolutionized standard practices in the studio.
No, keep reading.
And espoused by
You
the
want me to read
1960s
it?
counterculture and inspired development of psychedelic rock, electronica, progressive rock, and world music. The camaraderie of the four Beatles was at its highest point through this period.
Maybe that's why it was great.
Agreed.
As of 2014, it was certified 5 times platinum
It's cool.
by the RIAA.
pretty good.
In America, Capitol was very wary of the religious references in Eleanor Rigby, given the ongoing controversy. So instead, they pushed Yellow Submarine, which makes sense.
But it's a brilliant song.
Although commercially successful, it is ranked only 10th with help on the list of Beatles' biggest selling albums in the U.S.
Still my favorite.
You know, that's funny. You mentioned that Eleanor Rigby people got upset because of the religious undertones of the song. The funny thing about it is the song was written completely about a gravestone that was actually at a cemetery where they used to hang out and smoke cigarettes as kids. And they literally just wrote this story of it based on, they just saw that and was like, what?
Made up a story around it.
Made up a story about it, you know what I mean? And it's like, but it's funny how people will take things a certain way, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And kind of run with it like that.
Well, let's go down the songs ready once again.
Oh, go ahead.
Taxman, you said. George Harrison, great song.
2, 3, 4.
Eleanor Rigby, another great song. It's pretty much just a Paul McCartney song, though, like you said. Love to You. I mean, I don't get that song. Again, the Indian stuff with the sitar and all that stuff.
You weren't a fan.
No, the sitar to me is just like nails on a chalkboard.
Well,
it just sounds so out of tune and twangy and just overbearing. So that song, a lot of this stuff, that's why I don't like a lot of this album.
Yeah. That was the George influence
Yeah,
there.
Here, There, Everywhere, great song. Yellow Submarine, again, you guys mentioned it's for the kids.
I was a
and
kid.
some of the stuff they did was kind of cool with the sound effects.
Yeah,
and the
well,
water
and at the time of
chains and the-
psychedelia too, I think people were sort of looking at those sorts of songs in different ways.
Yeah.
They were
Oh, yeah,
having more
absolutely.
fun with
Absolutely.
them, you know?
They may not have been realizing them as children were realizing them at that time.
She said, she said, easy
Great
to say.
I know what it's
Great
like to
song.
be dead.
Good Day Sunshine, another great song. But again, I mean, to me, the Paul McCartney songs on this album are the best thing on here.
Just awesome.
They're amazing.
For No One, I Want to Tell You, again, you're getting a little George Harrison-y. Got to Get You Into My Life. That should just be a Wing song.
Do you know what that's about?
Yeah, weed.
Weed. That's freaking crazy.
He wrote it about weed.
He wrote it about weed.
Why wouldn't
He wrote a lot of songs about
I
weed.
love it. I love that that's about. I liked that song even more once I knew it was about that.
And Tomorrow Never Knows His Day. Now, here's the thing. My
Yes.
3 favorite songs from this weren't on the original release. When they re-released it in, was it early
Oh,
90s,
And Your Bird Can
mid-90s?
Sing was on the re-release.
I'm
and
Always
that's-
Sleeping, great song.
Your bird can sing.
And Your Bird Can
Amazing
Sing,
songs.
amazing song.
It is.
And Dr. Robert, well, whatever, that's okay.
Well, those, I think, weren't those on Hard Day's Night?
No.
No, I think they're all just singles or
Yeah.
on. No, I think Yesterday and Today, maybe?
No, I think Your Bird Can Sing. I think that was on Hard Day's Night, not the movie.
No,
Picture
that was not
soundtrack.
on the album.
If we only had
Hard
a
Day's
fact
Night did not have
checker.
that on it. Hard Day's Night is actually an amazing record.
It is.
Like for as early as it was, but man, there is not a skipper on that one at all.
No, it's a great album.
I forgot
I
about
thought that was on there.
So
I could
let's
be wrong.
let's just say this gets a solid C. Okay, Dave, you're up.
Well, I happen to have the best Beatles record that ever came out.
Is it really a record?
Magical Mystery.
Stunning.
Tour.
Front to back, stunning.
Now, I will say, this is cheating. This record is cheating, and I'll tell you
Totally
why.
cheating.
He already knows why. But this record is cheating because 2 of the songs on it were meant to be on Sgt. Pepper and didn't make it because they had to be released as singles because Sgt. Pepper was taking too long to make. That would be Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields Forever. So think about those two songs not being on what is universally considered to be the best album ever made. Add Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields to that lineup, and then we couldn't even have this discussion.
Yeah,
it would just be
wouldn't.
Sgt. Pepper's the best record
Well,
ever
I was
made.
pretty close to
and we
being
just
off
all
the
move on. But I don't think any of us wanted to be that guy who said Sgt. Pepper. So I'm gonna say Magical Mystery Tour's first track, Fool on the Hill. Come on, Flying an Instrumental, which is unreal. Blue Jay Way, Get Out. The lyrics are amazing.
Yeah.
Your Mother Should Know, a great little like show tune deal.
Great
that like
song.
kind of, I mean, just a classy little. You can tell
all
Paul
good.
had his fingers on that. I Am the Walrus. Are you kidding me right now? Okay. They had walrus masks on. That was awesome.
Just John.
Hello Goodbye, which some people are like, whatever, but it's a great track, right? And then Strawberry Fields Forever, Penny Lane, we'll leave those out. Baby You're a Rich Man, to me,
Brilliant.
is the best deep cut Beatles song that's ever been made.
I agree with you.
I
love it.
There's going to be a
I
deep
love the
cut.
bass tone, and it's a great bass line. I think it's a great song.
It's a perfect song. It's
a great song.
And then All You Need Is Love, obviously, is the anthem of the 60s, probably, right? Mm-hmm. So now that's on there. And Magical Mystery Tour. The movie was a flop, completely boring, but this is some of the best music that's ever been put out ever, even though two of them shouldn't have technically been on here.
I think theoretically more than two of them. I think the whole last five were
Why do
all
we have to get
singles.
theatrical?
They weren't. Only the first 6 songs were supposed to be in the movie. So that's cheating.
It's not cheating. It's an album.
Well, but that's
It's
what
not
I'm
an
saying.
album.
So,
It is an
but we're
album.
not talking about movies. We're talking
about albums.
This record
Right.
got released with these songs on it.
And
Talking
and
about
then-
you putting the
when
needle
you
on the
put this
vinyl
in your record
and saying
player,
this
all
album
these
kicks
songs
ass.
are going to play, and
Yes.
you were going to get to hear
But the
all these
thing
songs.
is-
And you're not going to see a movie
Some
while
for the
it's
first
playing.
time. Some for the first time.
Absolutely.
So
I agree
there
with
you
the
go.
Beatles even hated that because in
Who
England,
cares?
it was released as 2 EPs.
There's two
And it didn't have any of those singles on there, just 2 songs aside on 2 EPs.
Yes.
So what?
So when they released it as an LP, because America didn't know what EPs were at the time, the Beatles hated it. John Lennon went on record as saying he hated it. This wasn't.
Who cares?
We were supposed to just release this music for the movie. These other songs.
But
were
what do
just
we
singles.
care what John Lennon
But
says?
look how it turned out.
But yeah,
That's
John
what
Lennon
I'm
also
saying.
loved Yoko Ono.
yeah.
He did. He
What's
did.
wrong with love?
All you need is love, Rick. It's right on this album.
So you can hate that album but love Yoko
And I have
Ono. I'm not
also
going to trust a
I have
damn thing that
also
guy
found
says.
that if you want to find true haters of music, go to the band that recorded it. They will tell you
John
everything
hates
they hate
everything
about.
about
They
most
hate everything
everything.
that they ever did.
All right. Let me drop a few more facts about this cheater.
Oh,
okay,
we
good.
can't wait.
Good. Hey, I acknowledged it. Before
I
we even
don't agree.
started.
I think it's a great album.
No, it certainly is.
It was released in the UK in December of 1967 and the US November 27th.
Tangled up in
So it came out in America before England? Interesting.
You should have read those before you read them.
English is his second language. Give him a break.
After Sgt. Pepper, Paul
Whining is his first.
wanted to create a film that captured the psychedelic theme similar to represented the author and LSD proponents of Ken Kesney's Merry Pranksters. While the Beatles were attending transcendental meditation seminar, their manager Brian Epstein died of a prescription drug overdose. During a band meeting, McCartney suggested they proceed with Magical Mystery Tour, which Epstein had given his approval earlier in the year. Magical Mystery Tour includes 6 tracks, a number that posed a challenge for the Beatles and their UK company EMI, as there were too few for an LP, but too many for an EP. So one idea was to consider to issue an EP that played at 33 1/3 RPM, but this would have caused loss of audio fidelity that was deemed unacceptable. The solution was chosen to issue music in the innovative format of a double EP that was the first example of a double EP in Britain. And
That's just jargon.
it lasted on the Billboard tops for 8 weeks at the start of 68 and remained in the top 200 till February of 69. I know, dogs, I understand. It was nominated for a Grammy Award in '69. The American import released at the what?
Here it is. And here we go.
Listen, this is stupid. The American import Capitol album release peaked at the record retailer LP chart at number 31. That's pretty low.
31
in January '68, and in the U.S. sold 1.9 million copies by December of '67. It has now went on to go 6 times platinum since.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dogs would tell you to shut up and quit reading because they like this album.
Well, I'm just going to say, okay, it's a cheat. It's a good album.
It's not a cheat. It's a great album.
It's not necessarily a compilation, but it's a release. It's an album release.
Thank you.
And even though some of the songs were put together at different times, again, what we just say about George can't even tell the difference between recording Rubber Soul and Revolver, but they both wound up on records.
To be fair, they've discovered LSD during this time.
Yeah. And that's why, and they were fighting like asshole, dude. They hated each other. So it's like a lot of this stuff probably doesn't have good memories with it. You know what I mean?
And the album he's going to pick, they weren't all recorded at one session.
No.
They were part of another session.
You mean the best
But I'll just
album?
let it be.
Nope, wrong one.
Wrong.
My album choice is the best album choice, like always.
Of course.
Abbey Road.
Abbey Road is so
Brilliant album.
So good.
Dude, all I have to do is say put on side 2 of Abbey Road, and everything else just falls to the side.
Yeah.
Shut your ball washer, Rick. I mean, it's from tip to taint.
Here we go. Haven't used that one before.
I would say.
Run all your cliches
Look,
through that album.
he's already taking it from me because he knows it's the best.
It's a great album.
There's
one
nothing
sticker
on here I can point at and say that you're wrong about that. Okay.
But it's not the best album.
It's
a great album.
I would say that side 2 is probably the coolest recorded piece of music ever.
Exactly.
Ever.
And that's why I win.
But coolness of record. And that's why I say this is a mood record.
Totally.
And when you're in the right mood, it'll be the greatest thing that ever happened to you. But sometimes,
front to back.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But I will say, man, Oh Darling
Tip to
being on
taint.
here, which is awesome. Something, obviously, George's best song. Come Together is John's favorite song that they ever did in the Beatles. He said that's the best thing they ever did. So it's hard to argue with you. I Want You, She's So Heavy is something that I'm dying to cover with somebody.
You haven't done that yet.
We've never done that.
We play a little bit of it when we do Day Tripper.
Dude.
And may I add, when you think of iconic album covers,
Well, there you go.
Yeah, it's a great album cover.
Listen,
It's
here's
not a shitty
what I'll
album. It's
say.
one of my
Here's what I'll say.
favorites. I own it. You're holding it.
We just said Revolver, Magical Mystery Tour, and Abbey Road.
My 3 favorites.
Honestly, there is all of them are amazing.
They're brilliant.
and I tell you what,
It's no throwdown.
it came down to me
There's no
between
battle.
Abbey Road and Sgt. Pepper. They're my 2 favorite Beatle albums.
Oh, good.
The only reason I didn't pick Sgt. Pepper is George's song on Sgt. Pepper. I fucking hate it. It ruins the album for me. And again, it goes back
You
to
don't
that.
like the droney chanty
I just
stuff,
that
do you?
chanty, droney, the sitar makes me want to throw myself down the stairs.
Okay,
Well,
but I'll
should.
give you one thing though.
Next,
If
I
you
suggest you put that album out and do that.
hey, do you want to find a love for that song though? I'll give you a love for that song. The who was the guy? George Martin's kid did a remix of a bunch of Beatles songs on that Love album.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
There's a version of that song on the Love album that's mixed with it's Blue Jay Way and the drums from Tomorrow Never Knows.
Really?
It's the most dude, it's awesome.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, and so if you've never liked that song, listen to that version.
check
you
it
will
out for
love
sure.
that song.
Let me drop some knowledge on this record, Rick.
Drop it.
Maybe Rosetta Stone could help.
Reading is fundamental. Son of a bitch. I'm not going to read these anymore. You got
almost
freaking
died.
tuberculosis Martin over there.
I almost died from that. That was funny.
It's the 11th release by the English band The Beatles.
It's about time they got it right.
It is the last album the group started recording, although Let It Be was the last album completed before the band's dissolution, April 2nd.
Half that album came from those sessions.
I'm reading.
Sorry.
It was mostly recorded in April, July, and August of 69 and was released on September 26, 69 in the United Kingdom and October 1st, 69 in the United States, reaching number 1 in both countries. By the time the album was released, Lennon had left the group, though it was not publicly announced until McCartney also quit the following year. Although it was a media commercial success, it received mixed reviews, which is insane.
Yeah.
By contrast, critics today view the album as one of the Beatles' best and rank it as one of the greatest albums of all time.
Oh, this is a good album.
It's not insane if you just consider that it's ahead of its time and people can't grab
Absolutely.
it yet, you know.
After the recording sessions for the proposed Get Back album, Paul McCartney suggested the musical producer George Martin and the group get back together and make an album the way we used to do it, free of conflict that had begun during the Beatles, also known as the White Album. Martin agreed, with the strict condition that all group members, particularly John Lennon, allow him to produce the record in the same manner as the earlier records, and that discipline would be adhered to.
Yeah.
Yeah. During the sessions, Lennon expressed a desire to have all his songs on one side of the album and all McCartney's songs on the other side of the album.
Can't he just get along with people?
He's such a dick. Lennon ultimately said that he disliked Abbey Road as a whole and felt it lacked authenticity, calling McCartney's contribution music for grannies to dig and not real songs.
I don't know. He's funny. I like the guy. He's funny. He's a ball buster. I like him.
And describing the medley as junk, just bits of songs thrown together.
Yeah.
But it's brilliant.
Abbey Road sold 4 million copies in its first 2 months of release. In the UK, the album debuted at number 1, where it remained for 11 weeks. In the US, the album spent 11 weeks at number 1. It was the National Association of Record Merchandisers' best-selling record of 1969. It has gone 12 times platinum.
Okay.
So it's smoked both those records, which means it's the best.
No, it doesn't mean it's the best.
It's hard to argue, man. That's what I say. It's like, you know, it's not like you said Yellow Submarine, so I can't argue with you like a super
Right, there's
lot.
no stinker on this album.
There really isn't. And then once I looked at the bag, it's like, man, there really isn't. I mean, Maxwell Silverhammer is probably the closest thing.
Yeah,
but you know what I
still
mean?
brilliant.
And it's still pretty brilliant.
And it's just Paul.
Well, look here. Let me ask you guys this, and you can tell me what you think.
Sure.
I've always said that when it comes to the Beatles, Paul was the sound of the Beatles. He was what made them sound that way. Mm-hmm. John was the soul of the Beatles. He was the vision of the Beatles. He's what made them so interesting. But when people like talk about the Beatles, they want to pick a side. If you just want to break down why these records sound the way they, you have got to give Paul McCartney a lot of credit.
Absolutely.
Because there's a great book by a guy named Jeff Emmerich, who was the engineer almost all the records from him. And he claims, and I have no reason not to believe it, but he says the Beatles would go to these recording sessions, they'd be up until 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever time it was. Then they'd all tucker out and they'd leave. And he said Paul McCartney would turn back around and come back into the studio for 2 or 3 hours and recut George's leads with his own guitar.
Really?
He literally says, no, George doesn't even know some of the leads aren't even in on it.
That wouldn't be surprising because Paul was like that.
Well, he was just
he also redid Ringo's parts on
he
several.
knew he played a lot of drums. He was
the best drummer in the Beatles.
You know, but he was the best drummer in the Beatles.
He's not even the best drummer in the Beatles.
But so like I said, I think Paul should get a lot of credit for the way these records sounded because he cared the most.
Right, and after Epstein died, he really is the one who kept the ship together.
Well, and that's what made the other Beatles so angry, though, is he really stepped up and wanted to take. Someone needed to lead that ship, but they resented the fact that it was going to be one of the members. Right. You know what I mean? But then who can you trust outside of that group? You know what I mean? So it was a weird situation. But like I said, man, the Beatles wouldn't have been the Beatles without all 4 of them.
Absolutely.
You know, but Paul really just did. He dug his feet in there, man, and really made some great records.
They were the best, man. And I tell you what, you know what I like a lot about that album? Guess who worked on that album?
Say that again in English.
You know what I like a lot about this album?
I heard "Whoa, Black Betty Bam the Lamb" is what I heard.
You know who helped work on this album?
Who's that?
Eddie Kramer.
Yeah. Well, hey,
it's true.
So,
guy's a genius.
Who went on to do a few things with Jimi Hendrix and
a couple others.
There weren't many people who got to help the Beatles. So if they did, you know what I mean? It's like, that's a big deal. Like, that's why, you know. obviously what.
Have you seen the documentary that just came out? Was called Get Back?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you watched it?
No, I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, you have to, because you know who the superstar was? Billy Preston.
Billy Preston. That's what I was just gonna say, man. And he's why some of those records came together the way that they did, especially like Let It Be and stuff.
And Abbey Road.
Because those guys hated each other so much that when he came into the studio, they all got on their best behavior because they all respected him. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely.
So they didn't. None of them wanted to be the asshole around Billy Preston.
You see that in the
So it's like, yeah, it's so cool, man. I'm a huge Billy Preston guy. I'm a big Leon Russell guy. I'm like because like we talked about earlier, my transition from gospel music to rock and roll, there needed to be someone to light the way for me.
Right there, yeah.
And Leon Russell showed me how you could meld those two things together, and he's my biggest influence in life. But
Leon Russell is great.
That's great. But anyway, yeah, I just love musicians.
Great talent.
I think we've done it, boys. What do you think?
How cool was
I think
this,
we've decided that Abbey Road's the best record.
We did. You're the winner.
Thanks, man.
You're the winner.
Dave's on my side.
I know. Hey,
I'm not
but you
gonna
picked an
concede to
awesome
that.
one too. Go on, break the rock. Come on, you got it.
I'm not going to concede.
We
to
all
that.
picked winners, but you know,
because these are my
hard to
three
argue.
favorite albums. I keep them all at the same level, so I'm not letting him win
You
this.
can't go wrong with the Beatles record. I don't care what Rick
It's like
says.
pizza.
Well,
it's bad even when it's good,
Scott,
even when it's bad. Right?
Hear me out. How about no?
You make a valid point.
You know what?
Man
That's
of many
what we
words.
like about you. Your valid points.
All right. I think we've done it. Dave, we want to thank you for hanging out with us tonight.
Yeah, man,
Thanks for having
absolutely.
Go
me.
It was
check
great.
out
So fun.
both his bands when they're playing. I guess the Sunrise Jones you'll probably get to see more.
Sunrise
maybe.
Jones a bunch, and then hopefully Uptight Sugar will be coming in.
Yeah,
right
check them out
behind me.
online. Download their songs. It was great having you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for doing it here, so I don't have to drive home.
No, it helped me too, man. Geneva guy.
Well, you're not even that far away.
No,
Yeah.
We should hang out more often.
so I could have walked here probably. I'm not gonna, but
I live up in the village, man.
Scott's the odd man out.
I know.
man.
I can drive all the way out here.
who would have thought this area had all this talent? Who would have thought it? You
And
know what I
Keith.
mean? It's like, and him too. Yeah, with the cool shirt and everything.
Anyway, for Stairway to Cleveland, I am the Walrus. We are the Eggman. We'll see you next time on Stairway to Cleveland. Deuces.
We're out.
Hey, if you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends.
And don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Show us your
Everywhere.
tweets. Ooh.